Okay, so to get started, we have a professional AAA game programmer at Sony San Diego who is also an advocate for Black devs and indie professionals. We have Kojo here.
Oh wow! Hey everybody.
Hey, hey,
What's going
Kojo,
on?
how's it going?
Not bad, not bad. Good to see y'all. Happy to be here.
Man, it's super amazing that you're here,
Yes.
Kojo. You're such an advocate for Black game developers and developers in general, and you are just a staple in the industry for being an engineer. And I think we should just get started with a little bit of your history. I think people really want to know what you're about and what you're actually doing at PlayStation.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So my current title is gameplay programmer, and I'm based in San Diego. I was working with San Diego Studios, and I'm with a different organization there now. And I've been a game developer since 2008. Actually started my career in New York City. I went to school at NYU. I studied computer science and cinema studies. There was no game center there at the time, so I didn't have like a game program to study. But what was interesting is my second job out of school, I actually worked at a small company called Area Code that was founded by Frank Lance, who was the founder of the NYU Game Center. So actually working with him, I was able to go to a lot of those talks and whatnot over the years and get kind of enmeshed in the New York like game scene. And I was really into that stuff, like all those academic discussions and whatnot. So did that for years, went indie slash freelance for a few years, moved out to San Diego, was an IGA organizer for a while, and now I'm at PlayStation.
Dope, dope. Now, what are you currently working on right now?
I'm definitely not at liberty to say, but I can say that it's awesome. And once it is released, I will be telling everybody. But I'm excited about the work that I'm doing right now. It's different than anything
You'll
I've
be
done
sharing that
before.
with us first, though, right?
You will be notified.
That's-
You'll be notified.
Okay.
That's cool. What have you worked on before? What are some of the past titles that you're super proud of being a developer on?
Yeah, like I've worked on a wide variety of things, like again, I started my career in like casual web games. So we were making virtual worlds in Flash, worked on a bunch of Facebook games. When I was freelancing, I worked on a really interesting project. It was a citizen science project for Connectomics to help map the brain. So the idea there is they had
Oh
data
wow.
from a mouse cerebrum, and you would scan it and actually identify different parts of it to see if you could track the tubes of it in 3D. I worked on a really cool Transformers boxing game for mobile. That was the first Unity game I ever worked on. At Sony San Diego, I worked on the MLB The Show franchise for many years, and that was really, really cool. That was my first time doing server programming as well. I got super deep into that. But ironically, I think the game I might be most proud of was a political game I made during the 2016 presidential cycle. It was a whack-a-mole game called Bop the Bigot, where it was this kind of tongue-in-cheek game where you would hit Trump, Joe Arpaio, and David Duke with a chancla, like a Mexican slipper. And I did it with this nonprofit group that
Wow.
was organizing voter registration in Arizona, and it got a little traction, and that was a lot of fun to work on.
So I really like that.
That's dope. So like how cuz you jumped into AAA, you've been into independent game development. Like how do you like that kind of mixture of development, like solo and as opposed to doing big game studio work?
No, for sure. I feel like I've talked to my peers about this kind of recently. I felt like when I was an independent, I learned a tremendous amount because I had to. And that was really interesting to go really wide in terms of my skills and my interests. But at a AAA studio on a really big team, you go really deep on something specific. You're not just the gameplay programmer. You might be focused on animation or combat or inventory, etc. So I definitely appreciate both experiences. I've done a lot of work on smaller teams and individually, but I like being on bigger teams now where I can really dive deep on something specific.
Nice, nice. Now, I think that one of the things that's super important that we want folks to understand is like, how did you how do you get into a game, like becoming a game developer? What was sort of your journey into that sort of thing? Because like, there's tons of folks out here who want to actually become developers, don't know how hard it is to actually build a game. Because I think people don't understand that it's not easy
At all.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, making games is hard. I would definitely say, and it's different now than when I started in 2008, and definitely like when you started, Justin. There's so many more schools and programs now. There's so many free engines now. So, ironically, I think that making a game has become easier than ever because there are really tools that are readily available. I'm not sure if it's necessarily gotten easier to get into the industry, but I'll say what worked for me and what I still recommend for people is to find a community. So the IG Day was that for me, IGDA New York. I went to an event. It was interesting. I never heard people talk about like game development and design that way. At the end of the event, I met two individuals. Both of them gave me a business card. I ended up interning for one of them, and that was basically my foot in the door. So when I came to
Nice.
San Diego again, I didn't really know anybody here, so I became involved in the local IGA community. We organized regular mixers every month, 2, 3 game jams a year. Through that, I was able to find some freelance work. It's not the way that I ended up working at Sony, but it was definitely a way for me to build a community here and get to know a lot of other developers, and I got some freelance work through it. So I would definitely say the first thing I would recommend if you're interested in games is to find a community of people that are interested in making games. If you have one locally at your school, or in your town. And if you don't have one, then you should start one. Start a video game development club. There's so many places you can find digitally as well, Discords, itch.io. And then the next thing would just be to make a game, do a game jam. Just try to make something over a short amount of time and just realize, what it takes, how hard it is, and if it's something that you want to do. Because sometimes, you go into a game jam thinking you're going to make, World of Warcraft, and then by Saturday afternoon you have like a box moving left and right. You're like, okay, well, let's see what we can actually get.
That's hilarious.
This is a, yeah.
GTA. You know what's really interesting though is I think that you really touched on something. Is you sometimes we have to create our communities, and I'm a big advocate for that because I actually did the same thing. Fresh out, I went to Art Institute, and as you know, in San Diego, there's like Rockstar San Diego, there's Sony. There was a couple other studios, and there was like Qualcomm, and I was like, I want to do independent stuff. I want to be creative with what I'm doing, and I didn't have. There was no IGDA San Diego happening. I couldn't figure out how to connect with professionals, so I basically did the same thing. I was like, yo, let's do at Pizza Port in Carlsbad, where all of those
Yep.
folks are at. Let's have a beer. I'm gonna make a flyer, right? And like, I think we definitely like that's a really really good point. Is like you can't always wait, for a group to pop up or the best
Build
opportunity.
a community.
Yeah, you have to build a community, create your community, and kind of like as a segue to another part of the conversation that I wanted to have with you is, I mean, you're actually doing that right now. And if you're comfortable talking about it with PlayStation, right? Like
Yeah.
we've been in communication to help developers, and that's big, and it's because there needs to be support. Can you kind of talk about the strides that you're taking to help out developers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've definitely been an advocate for game developers and game developer communities since I was an IGDA organizer in San Diego. Then when I started working at PlayStation in San Diego, I stayed in the IGDA group for a little while. Then I moved away from that and started becoming a part of something that at the time was called PAN at PlayStation. That's the PlayStation African American Network. And honestly, PlayStation, that was my first like corporate gig. I never worked at like a really big company before that. So I found out there's something called DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I think these things are fairly recent. So we had these employee resource groups. They're called employee networks now, and they're a way to get together with different folks in the company with particular affinities. And to be totally honest, I just wanted more black friends at work. So I was like, oh yeah, Pan, I'll join that. Cool. So I joined that. I met a lot of cool people in different parts of the company with different experiences. And it was just really, really cool to hear people's experiences because, as you guys know, there's just so few black people in tech and in games in general. Like there's all kinds of challenges you face in this country, for a wide variety of reasons. And again, making games is difficult. Getting hired is difficult. So when you find other people with similar experiences, you're like, wow, like how did you get here? And there's so much that you can like resonate with them about that. So I was really into Pan. I was really into the community we had there, and we just wanted to kind of expand and keep doing activities and doing things to advance our careers, doing things to celebrate our culture, and doing things to connect with the broader Sony group and other like-minded DEI groups. So I've been involved in that for several years. The role I kind of slid myself into was community outreach because I'm sort of a outgoing person anyway. I've done other community organizing. And the main, I guess, endeavor I've been championing lately has been this thing called the New Visions Project, where me and some other folks have been really trying to support more Black game developers on the PlayStation platform in really concrete and specific ways, and trying to identify opportunities to connect with developers, to offer them information, offer them guidance, offer them resources, and just kind of help shepherd them along the process of being successful developers. Because again, in addition to not knowing how to get into the industry, once you're in, sometimes you don't even know what to do. Sometimes you don't know who to ask, how to get on a certain platform. You don't know how to ask for money. You
So
don't know
true.
how to, create a business or have a thriving business. And I feel fortunate enough to be in a position where I've learned some of that information. I have access to people who can answer those questions. So I think through some of the DEI and connection work that I've been doing with Justin, I think we want to try to spread more of this information and make an effort to allow other people to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it does seem sometimes like it's a black box, especially for everyone. And then folks who really do not have the opportunities or access, it's like you definitely need kind of a lead in. So it's awesome what you're doing, and it's great to work on some of this stuff. If you're comfortable chatting about it, what are some of the obstacles you have had as a Black game professional in the AAA space?
I mean, it's really hard to say, like again, like making games is hard, being a Black male in America is hard. So like it's hard for me to think of any like specific cross sections with that, but one thing that I think I can speak to easily is just not necessarily feeling as though I'm completely understood or recognized, in the way I communicate and in the experiences that I have. And that can just be a challenge with communication. If your leadership or your team members, don't have similar experiences like you, don't look like you, they don't kind of understand where you're coming from, it can make everything more difficult. And that's not to say anything specific about the team I'm on right now, but I feel as though there have been times in my career where I feel as though the challenge in communication was part cultural, and that just kind of comes with the territory. I think that there's maybe a handful of instances where I felt like this is going a little left. So I think that with that, the challenge again for me has always been to try to focus on how do I ensure my success, and how do I not get caught up in any kind of situation or any kind of conflict that could detract from what I'm trying to achieve ultimately. Like, I know I'm trying to be successful in my career. I'm trying to advance. I'm trying to work on cool stuff. I'm trying to, get paid. I'm trying to be a game developer, So like, if I feel like I come across something that's going to try to detract from that, I'm going to do whatever I can to move around it. And definitely having a community helps for that, like having Black at PlayStation and like those coworkers that you can just kind of like rap with and talk with once in a while and just really like relax. It can really make you more comfortable at the place where you're at. So that's something I'm very thankful for in terms of being a Black developer.
Yeah, that's true. Just trying to keep your nose clean sometimes. In that capacity, it's just like, yo, I got to maneuver the BS, just get my work done. So I know I totally feel that. I think that a lot of times it is that. It's not like overt craziness,
Yeah,
but there,
the isolation.
yeah, it's sometimes isolation or just trying to figure out how to, maneuver.
Navigate the space.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Kojo, I come from the sort of the hardcore tech side, the back end. So you said you did some stuff on the server side. What was that experience like? Say going from like just traditional game development, but doing actual like server programming.
So it's wild. It was really like the perfect transition for AAA as far as I'm concerned, because I started my career making Flash games. So those are necessarily on the web. And we were making multiplayer games. So I started out as a client programmer. So I had a concept of how network programming works. And apparently, like, a lot of people don't start in that way. And I didn't realize it. I just sort of took it for granted. So I'd actually done a lot of, like, network programming and stuff. And then when I was freelancing, I worked on a multiplayer VR title. So I'd done end-to-end a little bit. But it was, like like a peer-to-peer thing, so you didn't have to do any authoritative work. So baseball, when I got hired for them, it was actually on the online services team. So they were rewriting their server in C++ and a combination of C++ and C Sharp for performance reasons and for other internal reasons. And they were basically looking for people to help them out do that because it was going to be this monumental task. So really, I think they were interested in me because of my C Sharp experience, because I had done a lot of Unity work. But when I went freelance, it was really an opportunity for me to dive into C++ and learn that. I had never done any C++ work professionally. It had all been self-taught. So I think once, I passed the technical interview and they got me in there, they're like, oh, this guy can write some C++ too. So what was interesting about it is, since the nature of the work was so rote and there was so much of a volume of it, for me, it was like, this is a time to practice C++. So I got to rewrite all these services in the old language to the new language. I got to make sure they're fast. I got to make sure that it's written safely, because crashing is always bad. But when you crash on the server, you take down everybody. So I think like the experience of writing server code as opposed to writing client code just had me thinking about things differently. It had me becoming aware of issues that you don't have to think about on the client, for example. And then also operational things, like if you have an issue with the data while the game is live, how do you update the database or whatever without bringing the game down, because you want to avoid downtime, just different kinds of problems you have to approach. So I thought it was incredibly informative for me, and also kind of an excellent way for me to like transition from the more casual side to the AAA side with like the skills I had, and then also build more skills that I could take forward for other things.
That's awesome. And so now you're doing more gameplay programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm pretty much back on the client side now, which is, I think, where I wanted to be ultimately. I can definitely do both ends of it, but I think that in my career, I've had most enjoyment doing like client side stuff, interactive stuff, like quicker reactive kind of things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kojo. It's amazing having you, and we're definitely going to be talking more. Do you want to kind of give a shout out about some of the things that you're working on and how to follow you?
Yeah, you can definitely hit me up on Twitter. Did my video freeze? I'm not sure if that's just for me.
I think so. Yeah.
Darn. Yeah, let's see. Shucks. Well, you can definitely hit me up on Twitter. It's Twitter another Kojo. Usually retweeting memes, whatever I find interesting. Again, once my game is released, I'm going to be shouting it from the mountaintop. So you're definitely going to hear about it. But I think till then, just kind of stay tuned to the work that I'm going to be doing with you, Justin, and Black Voices to try to help other Black developers, maybe behind the scenes, maybe in front of it. But, I think staying tuned to Black Voices, and hopefully I'll be able to contribute to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, man. It's
Really
dope to
appreciate
see.
it, brother.
Yeah, for sure. And Kojo is amazing. Yeah. He's been working with us on figuring out our programs and such. It's great to see folks taking strides to make a difference in and outside of like a corporate type of setting.